here is the brief news from the world over this week. Another wave of violence has left 300 or more dead in northeastern Nigeria as Boko Haram continues its efforts to carve out its own caliphate, a la the Islamic State. This past Friday, 2 suspected militants detonated suicide bombs during Muslim worship at a mosque. 120 were killed. Marketplace bombers killed another 50, and 2 Christian towns were firebombed. Meanwhile, the U.S. Embassy in the country is reporting that the Nigerian government has canceled a U.S.-led military training program for its soldiers. The program began in April. No explanation was offered. House Republicans took a largely symbolic vote on Thursday to voice opposition to President Barack Obama's executive action on immigration. Drafted by Florida Republican Ted Yoho, the bill states that the president does not have the authority to selectively stop deportations of certain categories of illegal immigrants. The bill would not undo President Obama's executive order. Supporters call it a messaging bill to assert Congress's legislative authority. 7 Republicans voted against the bill. The deadline for continuing to fund the government or shut it down looms next week. A vote on that is expected on Thursday. Also in Congress, the U.S. House approved a package of modest tax breaks that will allow individuals and businesses to claim deductions on their 2014 taxes. Legislators passed 55 so-called tax extenders, breaks that expired in 2013 but would be restored by this new legislation. The bill would include credits for research and development, energy, college students, and commuters. The legislation passed was far more modest than what was originally considered by Democrats and Republicans. The White House threatened to veto the bill for not doing enough for the working poor. Deductions and credits would total about $45 billion for taxpayers, but the perks will expire again on December 31st. The bill now goes to the Senate for final approval. And a backlash in Finland after its government passed a same-sex marriage law by a close vote this past Friday. In reaction, 8,000 members of the Lutheran Church of Finland, the official state church, have resigned. After the vote, Finland's leading prelate, Lutheran Archbishop Karl Makinen, backed the gay marriage bill, sparking the exodus. Finland becomes the 12th European nation to legalize gay marriage. And the Dominican Republic's top prosecutor is offering praise for the Vatican's handling of the ongoing sex abuse case against a former Holy See ambassador to the Dominican Republic. Archbishop Joseph Wesolowski was recalled as papal nuncio last year and eventually laicized after allegations that he paid poor underage boys to perform sexual acts. He was recently put under house arrest by the Vatican. Still, he faces criminal charges. Dominican prosecutor Francisco Brito met this week with Vatican officials in Rome to discuss the case. And change at the Vatican is continuing under Pope Francis. On Wednesday, the Vatican announced without explanation that the commander of the Swiss Guard will be replaced after January of 2015. Colonel Daniel Anrig, 42, has led the Swiss Guard for 6 years and initially had his term extended by Pope Francis. The Telegraph is reporting the change as a sacking. According to Vatican observers, the Holy Father saw Anrig as too strict, and he wants the 500-year-old papal army to be less rigid in its rules, less military-like. The Holy Father has been seen breaking protocol with the Guard, shaking hands with them while at post, for example. He was also reported to have brought a cappuccino to one exhausted guard who stood post outside his door all night. The Pope insisted that the guard take a seat. Another breach of protocol. A replacement has not been named. And 10 years after then St. Louis Archbishop Raymond Burke said he would deny Holy Communion to pro-abortion presidential candidate John Kerry, the debate continues. In an appearance on CBS's Face the Nation, Chicago's new Archbishop Blasé Cupich seemed to indicate that he would allow pro-abortion politicians to receive the Eucharist. Here's his exchange with Nora O'Donnell.
So when you say we cannot politicize the communion rail, you would give communion to politicians, for instance, who support abortion rights?
I would not use the Eucharist, or as they call it, the communion rail, as a place to have those discussions, or a way in which people would be either excluded from the life of the church. The Eucharist is an opportunity of grace and conversion. It's also a time of forgiveness of sins. So my hope would be that that grace would be instrumental in bringing people to the truth.
The Church's canon law 915 stipulates a prohibition for anyone who publicly opposes church teaching, according to canonical experts. It reads, in part, those obstinately persevering in manifest grave sin are not to be admitted to Holy Communion. End quote. Pope Francis opened the Year for Consecrated Life this week, challenging men and women religious to live lives of courage, communion, and joy. On November 28th, the Vatican issued the Pope's apostolic letter to all consecrated persons, in which he cautioned the Church against being closed in on itself and stifled by petty squabbles. He encouraged all those who have taken vows to be joyful and prophetic witnesses to the gospel. The Year for Consecrated Life will conclude in February of 2016. And the Vatican's chief economic minister has announced that hundreds of millions of euros have been found, tucked away, in his words, in the accounts of several Vatican congregations, funds that do not appear on any of the Holy See's financial records. Prefect of the Secretariat for the Economy, Cardinal George Pell, told the UK Catholic Herald that the discovery shows the Vatican's financial picture is much healthier than previously believed. The Cardinal did not suggest any malfeasance, but he did speak of the relatively loose financial practices in many Vatican departments prior to Pope Francis's reforms. Since the Pope's election last year, the Holy See has carried out a major restructuring in order to comply with international financial standards. Pell stressed that the Vatican is not broke and that the new reforms should prevent a return to what he described as the bad old days. And the long-running feud between the Catholic League and the American Atheist Organization continues this year in California. Catholic League President Bill Donahue commissioned a billboard in Los Angeles between Century City and downtown. This year's reads, "Not all Christian haters are equal. Abroad, we're beheaded. At home, we're bashed. The differences are profound. So are the similarities. Have a peaceful and joyous Christmas." The New Jersey-based American Atheists have billboards in various communities in the South this year, including Nashville, Memphis, and St. Louis. Theirs feature a young girl writing a letter to Santa that reads, "Dear Santa, all I want for Christmas is to skip church. I'm too old for fairy tales." 'Tis the season, I suppose. And a rare collection of Shakespeare's plays was discovered recently in a small town in France. The rare first folio was part of a collection that once belonged to a Jesuit college in Saint-Omer, near Calais. And it may provide further evidence that the bard was a Catholic, or was at least sympathetic to the oppressed Catholics of his day. It is believed that this particular edition of the folio may have belonged to a Jesuit priest. First folios of Shakespeare's works are among the rarest of rare books, and this one brings the world's known total to only 233. Be sure to watch our Conversations the World Over show this Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern for a special conversation with Shakespeare scholar Claire Asquith. We explore the bard's faith, and might be interesting. With all the bad press cops are getting, here's some Christmas cheer from sunny Florida. After a 2-year-old girl accidentally called 911, 2 Boynton Beach police officers visited her home. Thankfully, all was well, but the little girl's older sister confessed that her family wouldn't be able to afford a Christmas tree this year. Officers Barry Ward and Terrence Paramore decided to take matters into their own hands. They headed to a nearby Home Depot and with their own funds purchased a tree, lights, ornaments, and gifts which they delivered to the little girl's home later that day. One of the officers was wearing a body cam, and the heartwarming video has since gone viral. It's a good reminder of what this season is all about. Good for those officers.